Welcome, crafty friends, Annie Collins here for Pajama Crafter Stamps. Today we're going to create this cute little leprechaun card. Let me go over the products I'm using and some other things. I'm pulling in the sketch of the card sketch printable that you receive once you sign up for our newsletter for free. Joy created this fun little card sketch printable. This printable is super easy and to use. This little area here is the same size as your A2 card, so it makes it easy to doodle out what you would like to design for your card. Now, that's my little leprechaun. You never mind how silly he looks. This is the measurements area, so I wrote down the measurements of my A2 card and all the layers. You have a notes section that you can put in any little notes you would like to add, like what dies you're bringing in from your stash, colors, and then you have a supply area. So I have our stamp set, the paper pad we'll be using. Speaking of our stamp set, we're going to be using the You're My Pot of Gold stamp set. This stamp set has 4 images, 7 sentiments. This image here has its sentiment attached, which it reads, "Life is beautiful," which is punny. The You're My Pot of Gold, which we'll be using today. The leprechaun, those little solid shamrocks. And then Sip Sip Hooray, Happy St. Patty's Day, and drinking of you this St. Patrick's Day, and let's make some poor decisions, which is also funny. So we're going to be using, like I said, the You're My Pot of Gold and the little leprechaun here with his little gold pot. And then I brought in papers from the Autumn Whispers paper pad. Now you're thinking to yourself, Autumn Whispers for a leprechaun card. What? Now, this is going to work. I promise you. I have the Autumn Whispers bundle. It comes with the dies. So you can purchase the paper by itself or with the little coordinating dies here. So these little dies, you get the 3 leaves and the pumpkin. Now, it doesn't come in that magnetic sheet. I put that from my stash, but I'm just letting you know it comes with the little dies. Believe it or not, I saw this and thought this would work for a St. Patrick's Day card. This green background one and this little plaid thought would work great. So I have this marshmallow cardstock we're going to use for our image, and I already stamped and cut out my image. And I have it ready to color. So this is the green I was telling you. It gives you the sky kind of feel. And then I pulled out this little plaid that I'm going to use here to anchor my little image. Because when I placed him on here, as you can see, it looks like he's just floating in a green sky. It didn't work for me. But placing this little bit of plaid with the little touches of golden color gave him somewhere to stand. So I have also from my stash some gold foil cardstock, some green cardstock, and my card base, which is A2 size. I'm going to set this aside for a second and show you that I have die cut from some lighter green cardstock, 2 shamrocks, and from a darker gold foil cardstock, a 4-leaf clover. So I'm going to clear everything off my desk really quickly for us to get started. So in my notes, I put that I'm going to bring in some dies from my stash, which were the little shamrocks and 4-leaf clover. And I'm just showing you here where I'm going to place everything. Now, my sentiment will lay towards the top, and I'm going to stamp that sentiment with the same paper that we're using for our background. So it blends, but I want to pop it up. So I'm going to trim this little piece here so I can place this into my stamping platform. Now we're going to heat emboss our sentiment. I'm going to put some anti-static powder here first onto our pattern paper. And I'm going to bring in some Versamark ink. Versamark ink is a clear sticky ink that will hold your embossing powder. And I'll be bringing in some gold embossing powder. So I'm going to pull out my sentiment. I'm going to bring in the You're My Pot of Gold. And then the little sub-sentiment reads, Happy St. Patty's Day. So I'm going to place those on my paper. And then I can adjust if need be. So I'm going to adjust my bigger one over because it doesn't, if I placed it originally, you don't pick up as much of the little green in the background. All right, again, I'm going to use Versamark ink. Like I said, the Versamark ink is a clear sticky ink, and it allows the embossing powder to adhere to it. That way it will stick, and then you can heat set it to melt it. So I'm going to bring in a little frog press and apply even pressure on my sentiments. I don't want to put a lot of pressure because I don't want to store it. I just want even pressure. Here's my gold embossing powder. Let me pop my paper out, and I'm removing my stamping platform out of the way. And you don't see the image or the sentiment until you apply the powder. It's like magic. There you go. And then here we go. I'm going to do this a couple times to make sure I have every word covered in the embossing powder. Now I'm going to bring it closer to myself so I can see it. You know, old eyes. So once I know that it's completely covered, then I can heat set it. I have a few stray pieces here of embossing powder, so I'm using a little small detail brush to brush away any excess powder that I do not want. Okay. And now I'm going to grab my heat tool, and you need a heat tool to set your embossing powder. I have it on, it's getting nice and warm. And then I'm going to grab a clothespin to hold my paper to keep my fingers out of the way. It's a fancy tool. It's expensive. So I'm going to heat from behind and then on top until the embossing powder is completely melted. How do you know it's completely melted? It goes from that dull gold to a shiny gold. And I'm just going over it in case anyone hasn't ever embossed before and I'm not sure. Again, it goes from that dull to that shiny. Now I'm going to fussy cut this. So I'm going to set it to the side to completely cool so I do not smear it. I've done that and then I've ruined it. So just let it sit for it's completely cool before you start cutting, die cutting, or anything else. In the meantime, that gives us time to color our image. We're going to color the little leprechaun here. And we're going to start with his skin. I'm going to put the caps up on the screen so that you can see them all. I have a little bit of a light pink for his cheeks, a lighter skin tone, and then a darker one. I'm going to start with the darkest to create the shadow beneath his hair here and around his beard. Now, not an expert colorist. If you want great coloring tips, tune in to Joy's live coloring tips. She does tremendous coloring. She has a lot of great detail and she goes over lots of great tips. She comes on live and you can find her live schedule and the playlist in our on the channel. Just head on over to the live section and you can see a whole bunch of them listed for you. All right, so I did the darkest, the lightest, and then the cheeks. I'm going to color his little ears and hands as well. And it looks a little dark, but it will lighten as it dries. Now I'm going to do his hair, and I'm going to give him like an Albany reddish brown hair. So I pulled out those, I have my lightest, and then a mid-tone here, which is like an orangey color. So I have a orange, red, and then mostly orange colors here. And I'll start with the darkest just beneath the brim of his hat and beneath in the behind. And then I can't forget his little beard. It's there. It's just a thin little beard. And I'm just going to fill in that. And then I'll go into the mid-tone and then finally the light and add some more details. This is a cute, quick little image to color. Nothing really big here. And I know there are shamrocks already in the stamp set, but I wanted some different type texture in here instead of just a stamped image. That's why I pulled in some shamrocks from my stash to die cut. But you can use the shamrocks in your stamp you can emboss those if you prefer with green embossing powder just to give a different look and texture. So we're almost done with the hair. I'm pulling in some more of the mid-tone here, and then I'll go back in with the darkest and fill that in. just adding some more texture to his hair. Once we're done with that, we're going to color his outfit. We're going to pull in some greens for his outfit here, and we're going to pull in some GO4 and GO5. So a light and a dark. I just went with 2 colors for his outfit. You'll see 2 colors also for his vest or shirt. His little vest is really what it is, because um, I kept this simple. Like I said, it's a small image. We don't want to overwhelm it. Now, if you prefer to do a 3-tone coloring, by all means, your image, you color it how you prefer. So I'm pulling in all the darkest first to put in my shadow areas, and some around here, around this little brim of his hat. And yes, I know I got a little bit into the band, but it's going to be black, so you won't notice it. So I'm trying to leave the highlight area the same at the top of his hat as well as the brim, so it lines up. And then I'll blend it out, as you can see. And then I'm going to color in his little outfit here. I'm going to pull in the darker areas, outline those areas first. So behind his lapel and his elbow area would create a little shadow onto the gold there, and beneath his hair. So simple coloring here. So don't let alcohol coloring intimidate you. And if you're not into alcohol coloring, this image would be adorable to color with color pencils. Watercolor would be adorable, as lovely too. So there we go. We're almost done with that. We have to do his pants. Almost forgot his pants. So go ahead, finish his lapels. I went lighter, the lightest with his lapel. And then I have to do his bow tie. I debated on doing it gold, but then I decided to do his little vest in gold and just go ahead and color his bow tie in the green so it pops. And then his socks have little stripes, so I'm going to do 1 stripe in the green, the closest to the shoe, and the other one I'll do in the gold. So I have 2 colors for the gold. I have yellow oranges. I picked the warmest ones to create this gold color. I'm going to go in with the darkest for all the shadowing area, making sure it's going in between the buttons that he has on his little vest to create that shadow there. Super easy. And then I'll go on that little buckle on his hat and little buckles on his shoes, as well as the coins will get the same color combo. Now I do bring in a different little highlight later to the buckles, but you'll see that it's just something extra that is optional, but I wanted to show you it colored so that you could choose just to color it or add more. All right, so I start the coins I did differently. I just colored them light first, and then I went in with the darkest just to add the shadow. Most of it is towards the bottom because they're all piled into the little pot here. So now these little shamrocks and the clover. He has a little clover in his hat and then a shamrocks by the little pot. I picked a G and a YG color. I started with the YG color, which is the yellow green, and then a green on top. And it's a light green, nothing really dark here. Just keeping that there. Just giving different shades of green on this card. Those are quickly done. And now we're going to bring in all the dark colors here, all our dark grays. So I have cool grays here in 5 and 7. I'm going to do the darkest on the soles of his shoes, and because that would be the darkest, and then around the shadow area. Same thing with the brim here, not the brim, the band, the band of his hat, to just indicate where the darkest areas are, and then I'll just fill in with the 5. So the 7 for the dark and the 5 for the light, and the same thing will be to his little pot here. Be the same grays. I kept all the similar colors, trying to keep it as even throughout. So I'm filling this in, and we're all just about done coloring here once I finish this little pot. This card came together pretty quickly. I also, like I said, used a card sketch printable and designed my card ahead of time, so I knew it would work out forming and then choosing the colors. This is a great way to pre-plan your cards. If you don't have the time to sit, it's a quick day, you only have a few minutes to yourself, pull a sheet out and to help design your cards. So when you go into your craft room to start working, it'll come together, excuse me, faster because you already designed it. So here's what I did. I used a metallic gel pen to highlight the buckles on his hat and shoes and the coins. This gave it a little more shimmer and emphasized that gold that we have throughout our card. Let me pull it up so you can see. I'm trying not to touch it so I don't smear the gold. And then the gel pen there. And I'm going to bring in a white gel pen. I use a number 10 to add some highlights on his hat and his pot here and his shoes. I also put a few dots on his cheeks just to add a little highlights to his cheek, and one dot near his eyes here to put a little highlight in his eye because he kind of looks just kind of blah. So, all right, our image is done. I'm going to move my clipboard out of the way, and I'm going to pop him up. So I'm going to add some foam adhesive to the back of our little image here. Unfortunately, the stamp doesn't come with coordinating dies, so you would have to fussy cut him or use your like scan and cut or something to that effect to cut him out. But he's a super easy image to fussy cut. Okay, so let me bring in the rest of the components for our card. And now our sentiment has cooled off, so I'm going to trim it apart, and I'm going to fussy cut the part that's up here. So I'm sorry I'm slightly off screen. It's to see better what I'm doing. I have to pull it closer to myself. Otherwise, it's all wonky. So I'm going to go ahead and trim away the excess, and then I'll go back in and do all the little detailing. I'm just going to fussy cut around it so that I can pop this up. Now, again, this is optional. You don't have to do this part. You can stamp directly onto your background and keep it all, that part all flat. I like to pop things up, so I did it this way. You have options, is what I'm trying to say. All right, just finishing up that last little bit. Again, sorry I'm off screen. Old eyes. You need to definitely bring things closer as you get older so you can see properly. All right, so now that should be just about done. Like I said, I will pop this up. Here we go, all done. And then for the little strip, I'm just going to get my tiny trimmer that I usually save for small things like this and just trim it down. I'll just keep trimming it until I get it where I want, because I want a nice thin strip of it. So I got as close as possible, and that's it. I highly recommend a tiny trimmer like this for little sentiments. It's great. All right, so now I am going to start adhering all our panels together. Make sure my card is facing the right way. I'm going to bring in some Burley Art glue to adhere everything. So I will adhere my background here to this gold foil. Sorry, the gold foil freaks out my camera, so bear with me. Now, apparently I had too much pressure going on, and it takes a minute for it to hold on foil on my die cutting machine, so it kind of warped a little bit. So I'm going to place, after I adhere all these pieces together, it under some acrylic tiles that I have in my craft room, just to get it to lay flat. You don't have to do this. It's just I didn't adjust the pressure on my machine, so it kind of warped my paper a bit. So I'm going to lay this on here. And then I'm going to grab, like I said, my acrylic tiles, place it on here. What are these acrylic tiles? So back in the day, when we wanted to set an eyelet, you had to pound them out. And these are pounding mats, acrylic pounding mats for setting eyelets. And I had a bunch of them because I used to sell them. Anyway, long story, old time. I still have some. So I use them now as weights to hold things. When I'm crafting, they're not super heavy, but they apply enough pressure. All right, so I'm putting some foam adhesive on the back of our sentiment to get that ready, and I'm removing all the backing so I have everything set to go while we're waiting for our panels to lay flat or to adhere. So I don't know if I mentioned, I think I did, the clover I cut from the gold foil. I cut that from a slightly darker gold foil than the one that I used on my card, you know, the layer, just to give us some, you know, interest, because I have a lighter and darker gold going on and a lighter and darker green. Same thing with these little shamrocks that you see up in the top there. I cut those from a slightly lighter green than the one I'm using for my, you know, layers. All right, so we're all ready to go. Let me remove this last little backing on my guy here, and now I can nestle him. So do you see how the plaid now becomes a nice place for him to stand? It anchors him. He's not floating in our green sky anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere my sentiment. I accidentally took the foam off the back of my D. And I'm going to tuck this little gold clover between my guy here, his little hat. I'm going to tuck it behind his hat, and the D, the little loop on the D. This way I can anchor them together. Here we go. And then these little shamrocks I'll be placing on the bottom. So there is a difference. I know you hear me say shamrock clover. Clovers have 4 petals, shamrocks have 3. So the top one is a shamrock, the top one is a clover, and the 2 on the bottom are the clovers. All right, so I'm going to trim this little sentiment down a little bit more. I decide where I want it. I thought up here, I don't like that. I ultimately end up down here in the bottom, but I move it around just a bit just to figure it out. This covers him too much. So basically I'm going to go right underneath our little pot of gold where I originally had the sentiment. Well, actually on my drawing, on my sketch, I had it across the little pot, but once I laid it on here, it covered it up too much. All right, so we're just about done. I'm going to bring in my embellishment tray and my embellishment wand to finish off our card with some gold confetti. So let me grab this real quick, and I'll just put a few pieces on here. So I'm going to place some, of course, on our little shamrocks on the bottom near our sentiment, and or the sub sentiment, and some above near our top sentiment. There we go. And now our card is complete. Super easy, nice, fun layers and texture. All right, so I'm going to bring in the items I used. We used our Marshmallow Cardstock is where I stamped our image. The Autumn Whisper pad, that's where we got our pattern paper from. And You're My Pot of Gold stamp set. We used our little leprechaun and our sentiments. I will have everything linked in the description box below. Those are affiliate links that will not cost you anything. Here's another look at our card. Thank you for being here. I hope you found some inspiration.